Among several controversies that have been coming up in the news almost daily, I decided to voice my opinion on this one. Again, this is just my opinion. You can agree with it, disagree with it. Doesn't make you right or wrong. This is just my opinion. However, I have to make sure that my opinion is not just based on something frivolous, but that it is based upon the condition of the soul and what would God want us to do. So I'm speaking at it from, hopefully, a biblical point of view. Okay, here we go. I believe it was last night or the night before. The actors Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were presenters of the BAFTA Awards. I believe that's the British counterpart of what we would know as the Oscars or something like that. Maybe not as high, but certainly with much prestige. Now, it just so happens that both Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo are black. Oh my goodness, who knew? Yeah, right, I understood. I'm getting to that. But as they were presenting this award, someone shouted out an N-word, just boom, blurted it out. Now, the person who blurted it out was an actor named John Davidson. And John Davidson, it is noted that he has something what is called Tourette's syndrome. And if anyone knows anything about Tourette's syndrome, they may not only just jerk uncontrollably, but they will blurt something out that is not necessarily appropriate. It's difficult for them to keep control, in fact, well nigh impossible, which is why they blurt out like that. Now, there may be some medication for it, possibly, I don't know. But I know it makes it very tough for them. And before they understood Tourette's syndrome, I'm sure that these were people that were looked down upon, possibly, you can even see them being beat up because they would say things that would antagonize somebody. They don't mean to say it, but they said it. Now, I truly do believe that this actor, John Davidson, did not mean to blurt out those words. From what I heard, he also did it 2 more times. So it wasn't just that time, but also but again, Tourette's syndrome, not able to control himself. So one may think, then why are you getting on him? He essentially can't control what he says. And because of that, it comes out. Now, I am not the one to understand what goes on within the mind of a person with Tourette's syndrome, except for the idea that they can't control what they say. Whereas most of us can't say it. They'll just boom. The question becomes, if you wasn't either in an environment that promoted such words being said freely, or if you weren't used to actually saying those words at some time. Either way, the words can permeate within inside. And remember what the scripture says about out of the heart. That essentially whatever is being said is a reflection of what's in the heart. If that is the case, then we have to look at John Davidson's misstep in a different way. Because most likely he did not mean to say that word right then, right there at those actors. But the question really is, was that within his mind to give him some impetus or give him essentially the word that you know shouldn't be said at a particular time, but it's already in your mind and in your heart? That's where the damage comes in. We know that people don't mean to hurt other people, if only because they don't want to suffer the consequences for their actions. So even if it was something that may have been in the back of their mind, they really didn't want for it to be put out in the front. And so therefore, it becomes an accident. Although less of one than what would normally be if the person truly did not want to do that action. Words, though, have a tendency.
Fault, front, door.
Words tend to have a tendency of coming out when you don't think you want it to come out. Thoughts slip out. And you do like, because you're ashamed as to what's come out. Now, I believe that the actor, I'm not sure if the actor did apologize to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, but that should be a good start. We cannot just excuse what someone has done because it's a disease. Let's say someone has a tendency to run around the house like kids do. Kids run around the house. And they're usually okay with it, but it's one time that they misjudge their distance and they run right smack into grandma, knocks grandma off the chair. Does the child just keep going? That's just what children do. They just keep going. Or does the child stop? Sorry, grandma, I'm sorry. Even though their actions let you feel as if they were going to do it sooner or later. But grandma, being kind, wanting to be able to see them shine, didn't really feel as if they wanted to run her over. And so she accepts the apology. I'm sorry. Grandma, I didn't mean to do that. Maybe you knocked grandma's teeth out. Now everybody's laughing at grandma. Grandma's embarrassed.
Fault, room, door.
But again, the kid says they're sorry. But at least they did say something. They stopped from their busy time playing and being oblivious to the world because their world ran smack into somebody else's. And of course, they don't want to get in trouble, so they apologize. And they didn't really mean to hit grandma. If they did, then yeah, they deserve to get. But usually they would apologize. And to me, that's really all that one would be looking for. You said that, okay, the person has Tourette's syndrome. And for those of you that know what Tourette's syndrome is, they blurt out things at the most inopportune times because they can't control what comes out of their mouth. Unlike most of us who can control what comes out of their mouth. So when you say something that's contrary, again, you got that either look or they actually meant to do it. But some people are saying that why should they apologize? They have Tourette's syndrome. It is what it is. And I say to that particular person, if someone with Tourette's syndrome had a gun and all of a sudden they shot somebody, shouldn't that person who had a Tourette's syndrome apologize? Of course, that whoever put the gun in the Tourette's syndrome person's hand then should be, what the world are you thinking about? But the one who did have the gun tends to apologize because you've just messed up somebody's life. If not completely unalive them. But the key here is, do you give the proper respect? And maybe that's the key. Yes, you have a condition. And you always have to apologize for your actions because you don't know when things are going to blur out. But there's two things that are going on here. Now, in with those two things. Number one, if you are committing this action, and it's a word that people know is a derogatory slang. Not only they know it in USA, they also know it in Great Britain. They know it in Ireland. They know not to call a black person that name unless they're racist. That will let you know how that person is. So, to me, even though you have this condition, you should not be in a position to not at least say something. But the one other thing that continues to trouble me, and I'll accept the apology. I would tell, if I was their manager, I would tell Michael and Delroy. I would tell them both, accept the apology. But I have to think, how did this word get in this man's mind? Because you can't say what's not in your mind. You can't say what you didn't pick up. You can't say what's already in your heart to say. You may not have meant to say it at that time. But the question is, did you mean to say it at some time unconsciously? And that's why we have to really start thinking about our actions. Now again, because this person has Tourette's, it's a lot more difficult for them to be in control of their actions, especially when saying expletives or profane or cursing words. But you can only say what was already inside of your heart. And that's what we know from Scripture. That if a person has Tourette's syndrome and never learns a curse word, then you're never going to hear a curse word. Because they don't know how to form it. Of course, with people saying all kinds of things anyway, they may hear one thing or another. Maybe they heard it on TV. Okay. And it stayed there. Maybe they heard it when their friends were talking. Okay. And it stayed there. Maybe they heard when their parents were talking derogatory things about certain people. There are different ways where you could have heard the word that was, as black people consider it, don't even try saying it. Key, though, to me is how did that word get in that person's mind to say it? Because he knew who to say it to. That's the key, too. It wasn't like he was saying it to an indiscriminate amount of people or to a mixed crowd even. He said it to the two people who you know is going to where it's going to mean the most derogatory of meanings. So that's something to think about. Again, race relations are not the easiest things in the world. And this is just another thing that we have to think about. But instead of accusing one another, let's have some dialogue. Let's essentially speak about why would that person like that have that in his mind to say, and essentially, how do we discourage people all over the world from having to pick up that word and using it? Because the less it's used, the less it's going to be used.
Fault, room, door.
The less it's used, the less it's going to be used. And it may end up becoming, what do you call it? It may become a word that becomes obsolete. Somehow, we should work towards that. Make words like that obsolete. May God bless you, and may He keep you. And may you always have your mind on what you say. God bless.